To keep up with our most recent articles, remember to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment with your ideas. The stack of boxes balancing precariously in my arms and the sigh that came out of my mouth weren't quite ladylike. Relocating. Why was it that I always had so much stuff? Instead of old picture albums and cooking tools I hadn't used in years, each box seemed like it had heavy weights. After the children had moved out and established their own lives far away, I made the decision to downsize. This new apartment seemed like a new beginning, even if it was smaller and had a great view of the park, or it would if I forced everything from my previous existence into it. Yesterday, I oversaw the furniture movers, although it was difficult to deal with the enormous amount of personal possessions. In the hopes that Mrs. Henderson from 3B wasn't waiting with her squeaky little dog, I pushed the elevator button with my elbow. The doors opened, displaying Daniel instead of Mrs. Henderson, happily. 4A's Daniel. Our encounters had been confined to courteous nods, perhaps a held door, and the customary neighborly routine that kept things pleasant but aloof despite the fact that we had been living in the same building for almost 6 months. He was tall, calm, had gentle eyes, and was about 10 years younger than me. Every time I saw him near the mailboxes or in the lobby, he always appeared to be reading a novel. His visage briefly flashed with astonishment before settling into his typical composed mask as he looked up from his phone. He observed my effort, the sagging cardboard tower, my tense expression, and the perspiration dripping from my brow in spite of the air conditioner. "You need help with it." His voice was silky like old velvet, and deeper than I had anticipated. Normally, I would have declined with grace. Even if my arms were going to fail, I'd say I'm okay simply getting by. Perhaps pride or simply a desire to avoid imposing. However, my determination broke down today when I looked at the pile of boxes that were still sitting in the corridor outside my former apartment. "Oh, would you, Daniel? That would be incredible." With a wave of relief, I let out a sigh. These things, I promise, proliferate overnight. I'm now in 5C. He put his phone in his back pocket and smiled slightly. "Absolutely no issue, Ellen. The worst is moving." His actions were efficient and economical, and he removed the top 2 boxes from my stack with ease. "Take the lead." The only sound to break the pleasant calm as we ascended in the elevator was the gentle hum of the equipment. The way his black hair curved slightly at the nape of his neck, the subtle aroma of sandalwood and maybe coffee that clung to him, and the strength in his hands as he held the boxes steady were all small details that caught my attention. There was an alluring solidity about him, a feeling of calm competence, even if he wasn't conventionally gorgeous in the sense of a movie star. His former flat for A was right across the hall from my new apartment, 5C. A few weeks ago, when we happened to walk past the recycling bins, he had discussed moving upstairs. We were playing musical apartments, it seems. As I let him inside, he positioned the boxes neatly against the wall. The living area remained disorganized, with more boxes everywhere and furniture covered with sheets. Dust motes danced in the sunlight that poured through the wide window. It echoed the status of my own life and seemed empty and incomplete. "Maybe," I replied, pointing hazily at the cardboard metropolis. "Wow, this is a lot. I may have overestimated the difficulty. It seems like a routine move," he said, laughing with a startlingly warm tone. "It always appears worse before improving. Where would you want to begin?" And suddenly he was in on it. For the next hour, we moved boxes into the flat from the hallway. His presence was unexpectedly comforting in the middle of the bustle, and he worked steadily and effectively without ever complaining. He wasn't distant, but he also avoided pointless small conversation. He listened carefully to my muttered instructions and asked useful questions such, "Kitchen supplies here, linens in the bedroom." Something had a beat to it. The lifting, carrying, setting down, and the fleeting contact of our arms in the confined corridor. Every unintentional contact gave me a little unexpected spark of awareness that I hadn't experienced in a very long time. It was simply obvious and not particularly flirty or disrespectful. There was a little change in the mood from courteous neighborliness to something cozier and more interconnected. There was no sign of effort as he placed down an especially heavy box Danielle books. He nodded at a battered edition of a Steinbeck book that was visible from the top and said, "Looks like we have similar tastes." And that insignificant read Daniel, that straightforward association based on a common author, seemed like the first break in the barrier I hadn't even known I had put up around myself. As the afternoon dragged on, the initial uneasiness vanished and was replaced with a feeling of purpose and something more I couldn't quite put my finger on. As we worked methodically, the piles within the flat expanded and the pile in the corridor shrank. Daniel appeared to work non-stop, and his calm enthusiasm was a pleasant diversion from my own growing weariness. My initial shame at requiring assistance had long ago subsided, and I now sincerely appreciated his generosity. We settled into a relaxed rhythm, working in comfortable silence at times and conversing at others. He gave me a brief overview of his work, which involved data analysis and seemed significant but challenging. I also gave some tales about my children and explained why I had moved. It seemed effortless and natural. He put down a last, clumsily formed box of lampshades and said, "All right, I think that's the last load from the hall." He used the back of his palm to wipe a drop of perspiration off his forehead, leaving a slight dust smear behind. I leaned against the doorframe and murmured, "Daniel, I honestly don't know how to thank you," as I became acutely aware of how exhausted I was. I would have likely been crying into a box of old tax returns till midnight. Once more he made his effortless, cheerful laugh. "I'm glad to assist, Ellen. Furthermore," he said, looking around the living room which is loaded with boxes, "it appears that the real fun is just getting started." I moaned, "Don't remind me. My personal Everest is unpacking. But I suppose I need to drink some water right now. Is there anything I can provide you? Iced tea, water, or perhaps something more potent?" Somewhere in that kitchen mess, I believe I found a bottle of wine. He gave it some thought. "Thank you, water would be excellent. The art is unexpectedly warm." I made my way to the kitchen boxes via the obstacle course, searching until I discovered glasses and a pitcher that I had fortunately filled earlier. I could feel his eyes on me as I filled 2 large glasses with water and added ice cubes that clinked happily, not in an unsettling manner but possibly perceptive and inquisitive. I gave him a glass as I turned. For a fraction of a second longer than required, our fingertips touched once more. The little spark reappeared, warmer than before. He took a big drink and murmured, "Thank you." As he swallowed, his Adam's apple shifted. Even though it was such a basic human thing, I was strangely captivated by it. I told myself, "Ellen, get a grip. He's only being kind." I thus started looking for a topic that was unbiased. "I take it you went up from 4A? How does the 5th floor seem to you?" He leaned on the kitchen counter and said, "It's good. Generally quieter with a little better view. That large oak tree is less of a hindrance." He pointed to the window. "From here you have a fantastic perspective of the park." The primary selling factor was that. I went to the window and confessed. Long shadows were formed across the verdant area below by the late afternoon light. The routes were walked by people. Frisbees were pursued by dogs. On a bench, a pair sat close to one another. It appeared serene and beautiful. I want openness after 30 years of living in the fence-lined suburbs. He came to stand next to me and said, "I understand that." I was able to sense the warmth emanating from him without getting too close. A change of scenery can occasionally involve more than just geography. His Reed Daniels struck a profound chord. There was more to this shift than square feet. It was about letting go of the past and discovering Ellen's identity, now that she wasn't primarily a wife or mother. It was exciting as well as intimidating, and it seemed surprisingly reassuring to be standing here, sharing this peaceful moment with this modest, gentle man who had appeared like a small miracle. For a few seconds we stood silently and gazed out the window, each of us lost in our own thoughts yet somehow united by the common space and vista. It wasn't awkward to be silent. It was friendly and full of implicit understanding. Carefully setting the empty glass on the windowsill, he finished his water. I should probably let you settle in, or at the very least, let you fall on the closest unopened box, he whispered quietly as he turned to face me. Yes, I nodded, with an inexplicable hesitancy to let him go. Yes, Daniel, once again, thank you. You really saved my life. Ellen, anytime. His eyes wrinkled slightly at the corners as he grinned. Knock if you need assistance packaging the mount. Usually, I'm present in the evenings. I may simply accept your offer. I tried to speak in a light-hearted, informal tone, but there was really no commitment. Think of it as a permanent offer. After responding, he proceeded to the door and stopped, resting his hand on the handle. His look was serious as he turned back. You know, Ellen, he said, a bit hesitantly at first. He trailed off, trying to find the proper words, but it's funny. I've seen you around the building for months. I feel like I'm meeting you for the first time today as I assist you and converse with you. I was surprised by his candor. Perfectly reflected how I felt. It seems like forever since the courteous nods in the corridor. This exchange, which began with a straightforward plea for assistance, had in some way lifted the curtain to show something more sincere. Daniel, I feel the same way. With a gentler tone than I had meant, I confessed. It's pleasant. For an additional minute, he maintained eye contact with me, a silent agreement between us. It wasn't quite romantic, but it was very intimate, a bond created through mutual work and chance encounters. I had the impression that I was standing on the brink of a brand new environment that I hadn't planned to explore. Well, he said as he opened the door at last. Neighbor, welcome to the 5th floor. He waved a little and walked out into the hall, softly shutting the door behind him. For a long time, I stood there as the apartment's silence settled around me. It no longer felt empty, but rather was filled with the echo of his presence, the warmth of his unexpected kindness, and the shocking realization that sometimes the most unexpected packages can bring help, changing not just boxes but also perspectives. The peaceful resonance of my recent connection suddenly overwhelmed the turmoil of the relocation, making it seem less daunting. It was more than just moving boxes. It was about sharing a genuine moment during a time of change. And that seemed to be the most important event of the day. With a slow smile on my face, I leaned back against the closed door. Perhaps a new flat wasn't the only thing this new chapter was about. Perhaps it has to do with actually and symbolically opening doors. I no longer saw the boxes as a daunting undertaking, but rather as a space that was ready to be filled, not just with possessions, but also with new experiences and relationships. The afternoon light suddenly appeared gentler, less harsh and friendlier. I inhaled deeply, the air heavy with the smell of dust, cardboard, and the subtle hint of sandalwood. Daniel placed an empty water glass on the windowsill, and I took it up, feeling the cool condensation on my palm. It served as a physical reminder of the day's unexpected turn. I chose to sit for a moment, right there on the floor among the boxes, and let the thoughts of appreciation to settle rather than starting the unpacking right away. In addition to it, there was something more nuanced, a feeling of being seen, really seen, maybe for the first time in a long time. It was a subtle, significant change in me, rather than a dramatic or earth-shattering epiphany. Daniel's offer of assistance kept repeating in my head. Simply knock. It was a straightforward invitation, but it had meaning. Shall I knock? Perhaps the idea was intriguing, a possibility, rather than a terrifying one. But for now, all I wanted to do was enjoy the sudden warmth that had sprung among the turmoil of moving day. Without realizing it, he had assisted me in carrying not just boxes but also some of the mental burden. And it was rather redonelliable, I thought. For the first time since the moving truck left, I had a true feeling of calm and a peaceful optimism about what was ahead in apartment 5C as the park outside was illuminated by the late afternoon's golden glow. Only the distant noises of the city and the smooth transition of my possessions into their new home could break the stillness. Seemed like a start. Few of days went by. I gradually began to chip away at the pile of boxes, turning the disorganized area into a home. Shelves were filled with pictures, windows were softened by curtains, and the scent of cardboard was replaced by coffee. But even as we settled in, the recollection of Daniel's assistance and our peaceful bond persisted. The casual companionship of moving day appeared to be suspended, even though I saw him in the corridor a couple of times and we exchanged quick, cordial welcomes. Was there more going on under the surface? Or was it just a one-time event driven by closeness and mutual effort? His suggestion came to me one evening as I struggled with a flat-pack bookshelf that appeared determined to resist installation, my aggravation growing. Simply knock. I paused. Was it intimidating? Was I exaggerating a straightforward gesture of goodwill for my neighbors? I was on the verge of kicking the bookshelf, though, and the directions may as well have been written in hieroglyphics. I wiped my filthy hands on my slacks and took a deep breath before crossing the tiny landing to his door. I knocked gently for a. Almost instantly, as though he had been anticipating me, the door opened. He was carrying a book and fingernailling his spot while wearing pants and a soft gray t-shirt. After registering a slight astonishment, their kind eyes melted into a warm grin. "Hey Ellen, how are things going?" "Hello Daniel." I stumbled and felt uncomfortable all of a sudden. "I apologize for disturbing you, but I'm experiencing a furniture-related technical issue." I made a hazy motion back toward my flat. "Does your offer of assistance include understanding Swedish diagrams?" He closed his book and laughed. "I'm an expert in Swedish schematics, or at the very least I can provide moral support. Take the lead." The offending bookshelf was in ruins on the floor of my flat, resembling a botched modern art project. Daniel looked around the scene, laughing. "Oh, I see what's wrong. The fourth step is always the most deadly." For the next hour, we worked side by side together. This time, it was more about teamwork and less about physical effort. Conversation flowed more easily than before. There was quiet joy when the parts eventually came together, and we laughed as we misunderstood schematics. Sincere in his desire to learn the backstories of the pictures I had posted, he inquired about them. I found out that he had a daughter attending college on the West Coast and was divorced. Although amicably, we found that we both detested cilantro and had a fondness for vintage films. Even though they were minor details, they felt like building pieces that helped to paint a more complete image of the person hiding behind the neighborly courtesy. A cozy stillness descended between us as we fastened the final screw and stepped back to examine the completed bookshelf. The dusk light shed a warm glow over the flat, making it feel cozier. "They're ready for all those Steinbeck novels," he added. I grinned and more. "Once more thank you, Daniel. You're officially my superhero for apartment setup." He joked that he was glad to have the Allen wrench of justice. He stayed for a while, looking about the room, absorbing everything. "Ellen, you've done a great job making it appear lovely. It's like home. It's approaching." Softly I consented. Subtly, the relaxed companionship gave way to a more subdued and heated mood. Although it wasn't painful, there was a noticeable increase in awareness. He turned back to me and listened, his face pleasant yet serious. "I realize this may come as a shock, but I had a great conversation with you the other day. Additionally, I wanted to know if you would be interested in going out to dinner today. Maybe that Italian restaurant down the street. Nothing expensive." I gasped. It was unexpected but not wholly unexpected. The easy talk, the shared laughing, the connection we'd felt. It wasn't only my imagination. I heard myself read Daniel. "Daniel, I'd like that." Despite the abrupt flutter in my chest, I spoke steadily. "That would be really appreciated." A gentle smile crept up his cheeks and into his eyes. "Fantastic. What about this Friday?" "Friday sounds ideal." He seemed happy as he nodded. "All right. I'll let you resume admiring your bookshelf." He started for the door, stopping once again like before. This time, he simply smiled warmly and genuinely before leaving without saying anything. After the door shut, I remained there for a while, the atmosphere buzzing with potential. Supper. Help was no longer limited to boxes and bookcases. It was a conscious move in the direction of something else, something unknowable, and I felt a peaceful exhilaration that I hadn't felt in years. Rather than a sense of anxiety, it was the sensation of a fresh, unwritten chapter opening as a page turned. The bookshelf was sturdy and unwavering, a tribute to teamwork, but it also seemed to represent something more. The methodical, cooperative creation of a new bond based on compassion, time spent together, and the guts to just knock on a neighbor's door. Not with a loud explosion, but with a subdued invitation,